Howdy, folks, and welcome to TuneScores, the best way to put a number on something that should be unquantifiable. My name's Carrie Nightingale, and with me, as always, is Kevin Niebrick. Kevin, how you doing tonight?
It was a long, hard day at the salt mine, but I'm doing well now.
Well, that's good to hear, and I hope you're excited because we've got a great show in store for the folks at home. We're talking about video game songs, or songs from video games, however you want to put it. This should be good. So, Kev, you selected Jenova by Nobuo Uematsu. I hope I'm pronouncing all that correctly. I selected American Venom by Woody Jackson. And then we kind of jointly agreed that Super Mario Brothers would be a good one, something from our childhood that we remember. So we selected a medley played on the piano by the Koji Kondo himself. And the audio was terrible, but it was a treat anyway. Spoiler alert there. We're going to go ahead and go in order. Kev, we're going to talk about Jenova first. So I'll go ahead and prosecute since it was your selection.
Go ahead.
All right. At a steady 199 beats per minute, according to my count, this has a decent 4-on-the-floor rhythm, which very nearly makes it danceable, although a large, less than graceful fellow like myself is definitely not going to be dancing to 199 BPM. The melody's good, but it's the harmonic texture that really helps it stand out. I particularly like the descending arpeggios that are the first thing you hear, and they continue through the verse sections. I rated the composition at a 2.9 out of 4. Kev?
Yeah, we weren't far off. Nobuo earned a 3.2 out of 4 for composition from me. High marks for melody, rhythm, and harmony. I actually wanted to suggest this song for our top tier harmony episode. I liked it that much. There's just a lot going on here. Melodies, counter melodies, and they really just come together to make an epic instrumental song. For reference, since you haven't played this video game, this is an otherworldly boss fight song is what's going on here.
What video game is this, and do you know about when it's from?
This is from Final Fantasy VII, one of the Final Fantasy VII.
It's probably the 7th one in that franchise.
It is. The first one on PlayStation, I think. This is a boss fight where you fight some weird monster from space. So, basically. So, for performance and production, Nobuo gets a 1.0 out of 1.2 for first performance on this one. Largely, I mean, it's completely electronic, the one we listened to. This piece is impressive. And the only thing I think holding it back is that 16-bit delivery. There's recordings by Nobuo's band, the Black Mages. They play with metal solos and guitars and such. Or you can listen to one of the many orchestral arrangements. Or you could play the new Final Fantasy VII remake that just came out to hear a more up-to-date arrangement of this song with maybe more feel. I think that you mentioned that it was maybe lacking a little bit, which we'll talk about here in a sec. As far as I'm concerned, the original is still the best. 1.0 out of 1.2 for performance. For production, 1.2 out of 1.2. No notes. I love it. How did it strike you as far as performance and production go?
Well, I also had no notes for the production, but thought that it warranted 2/3 credit, 0.8 out of 1.2. Really the same thing on performance, but a 0.9 from me, so I think slightly less than how you rated it. It sounds like it's entirely MIDI. It's locked to the grid. So you've got the technically proficient aspect of it, but it lacks humanity. So that's always a detractor, or at least something that's not going to allow a full credit, especially on feel for me. And interestingly enough, one of the things you mentioned about the symphonic releases or the metal versions of this track being perhaps more appealing. And this is what really gets to the point of subjectivity, because this version, the 16-bit version, I guess it was, not as appealing for me. I think I might like, and I will probably go check out a symphonic version. This one I rated it a 2.5 out of 3.6 for appeal. While Jenova is a strong composition, undoubtedly, and I could imagine hearing it during some epic battle in Final Fantasy VII, what are they on now? Final Fantasy 26?
Well, they ran out of numbers, so they went back and started remaking the old ones.
So here's the thing. I've never played this game that this is from. I have no attachment to it. But that said, I think it conveys that feeling of impending danger really well. And I might listen to it again. I would be much more likely to listen to a symphonic or even rock-oriented version, though. Probably not the death metal with guitars. It doesn't sound as 8-bit as Super Mario Brothers, but it's definitely still programmed. So it has aged a little bit better, I would say, than the original, say, Super Mario Brothers or those more 80s and early 90s soundtracks to video games. And I should probably put out the disclaimer here before I let Kev talk about appeal. I've never been a big gamer. That's why I picked a fairly recent one. Like, one of the only games that I've played is Red Dead 2. So that's why I wanted to talk about American Venom. But that's my take on the appeal for Jenova. I rated it a 7.1 for this version that we listened to out of an available 10 for TuneScore. But Kev, tell me why it appeals to you.
All right. So I gave Uematsu a 3.3 out of 3.6 points for appeal. So this one for me is important. It hits me hard for emotion because this is tied to a recurring boss fight in the game. And I played that game through more than once, something I'm a little bit ashamed to admit publicly. Lots of wasted time there. But it's just a fun game. It's a great story. I've never heard anything like this before. I listened to this game. I played this game and listened to this song. So I gave him full marks for innovation, full marks as well for repeat listenability. There are other songs in this same game that would play over and over and over again in the background. And so they're very memorable. They're very easy to recall. They're all beautiful. He wrote an amazing set of songs for this video game. This one only plays, a handful of times on one playthrough. And it's still extremely memorable for me. And it's tied very emotionally to that, those fights. So and that's why I think, it rates high for appeal for me. My final tune score for Nobuo Uematsu's Jenova is 8.8 out of 10.
Wow. Amazing stuff. So it sounds like if you have not played Final Fantasy VII, if you have played it, if you know this song, if you don't, it warrants you going and checking it out, as do all the songs that we ever feature on these TuneScore shows. And remember, we update the TuneScored tracks playlist on our channel with all these versions that we give TuneScores to make it nice and easy for you to go and check them out. Let us know what you think. I rated it a 7.1 for Jenova. Kevin, you gave it 8.8, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So let us know which one of us you identify with more in the comments below. But that said, I think it's time for a short break, and then we'll be back with American Venom by Woody Jackson. We'll be right back. Howdy, folks, and welcome back. For our next song, we've got American Venom by Woody Jackson. This was one of my selections. So, Kev, if you would kindly tell us what you thought of the composition.
I really dug this track. You're always surprising me with good stuff, so I was very excited to listen to this one. Woody received a 3.2 out of 4 available points for composition. High marks again across the board for melody, rhythm, and harmony. I should say that I've never played this game yet, so there's no emotional connection there for me. And I think that's how much I appreciate the composition of this track. They did a good job.
Wow, awesome. American Venom, as featured in the Red Dead Redemption 2 soundtrack, is sort of a remix from the main theme from the original Red Dead Redemption game, which came out, I think, in 2010 or 2011. And then Red Dead 2 came out just about 2 years ago, in 2018. For the composition, it's the combination of those organic drums and the rolling triplet accented bass line that gives this song a keen rhythmic edge. The harmonic component is gently textured at times, distorted and dissonant at others, lending added interest to the piece. The initial melodic idea is repeated a few times throughout the piece, sort of like a hook, a repeated musical idea, but it sounds different each time. And normally I would say that detracts from the score, but I think it actually works really well here. This is not your average throwaway spaghetti Western. I rated it a 3.4 out of an available 4 points for composition. The performance, as I mentioned, was organic. It sounds like it's played by humans. It almost certainly is. I think that maybe, I'm not a gamer per se, but I think that's probably not quite the norm in modern video games yet. But I rated it a 1.0 out of an available 1.2 for the performance. High marks for both accuracy and feel. Similarly for the production, I thought it was an okay mix. There was nothing that really needed to stand out or make that mix any better, but it was fine, 2/3 credit. And the arrangement, I gave it a little bit of bonus credit for arranging all the various instruments for their melodies and their counter melodies. So production garnered a 0.9 out of 1.2. But Kev, tell us what you thought.
I think we were pretty close here. I might have rated it just a little bit higher. For performance, Woody earned a 1.0 out of 1.2, and I gave him a 1.2 out of 1.2 for production, actually. I really enjoyed everything that was done there. As far as appeal goes, I gave Woody 3 points out of an available 3.6 for appeal overall. The emotion hits me for 1.3 out of 1.6, despite not having any connection to this song and not having played this video game at all. It strikes me as sounds like an amalgamation of classic westerns, spaghetti westerns, and whatever you would call what David Eugene Edwards writes. So fewer points for innovation, but repeat listenability is high at 1.5 out of 1.6. My overall tune score for Woody Jackson's American Venom is 8.4 out of 10.
Wow. Not just wow at how happy I am that you liked the song and gave it such a high score, but wow that we actually ended up with the same 8.4 out of an available 10 tune score.
Nice.
The reason for me, I rated this at a 3.1 out of 3.6 for appeal. Now, I never played the original Red Dead Redemption, but like I mentioned, I've played Red Dead Redemption 2 several times through, and it has an excellent soundtrack, even committing a few missions to slow rides on dangerous trails in order to feature very contemplative songs. But American Venom, this high-octane, electric guitar-driven, but still very Western sounding fight song is my favorite. It's both my favorite song and my favorite mission in the game. Now, while I don't go back and replay that mission just for kicks, I do the song. And it has my unqualified endorsement. So 8.4 out of an available 8.4. Tune score from both Kev, myself, and that'll be the composite, which we seldom arrive at in these sessions.
I think that might be a first, actually.
I think it is absolutely the first out of the probably 150. I mean, we haven't published that many of our reviews, but we have rated a lot of songs to get to the point where we're getting a little bit closer. So strong effort from Woody Jackson and from us. I'm proud of all of us. Well, that said, I think it's time for a short break. This one's brought to you by Mario the Plumber and his new expanded service area. That's right, he's laying pipe all over town. We'll be right back. Howdy, folks, and welcome back. For our final song tonight, we've got the Super Mario Brothers medley as played on the piano by the man himself, Koji Kondo. Now, this was more or less a universal selection, but Kev's going to defend, and I'll prosecute. So I'll begin with the composition. This rated at a 3.1 out of an available 4 points for its composition. The main melodies of each of the three themes are among the absolute most memorable melodies that continue to roll around the collective head of my generation. Those melodies, with the exception of the castle theme in its intentional sparseness, are well harmonized and backed by a simple rhythm that allows them to shine. And I should mention the medley includes the overworld theme, which you see in the very first, I think it's World 1-1 of Super Mario Brothers, the game. It includes the castle theme, and it includes the underworld theme, which is the one where you're swimming and invariably bumping into fish. But that's my take on the composition, rated very highly at 3.1. Kev, how did you feel about it?
Koji received a 3.4 out of 4 possible points for composition. Full marks again, high marks across the board. Full marks definitely for melody and for harmony. As far as the performance and production for this piece go, Koji earned a 1.0 out of 1.2 for performance. This is a live recording, so it's not perfect, but he definitely nails the feel. As far as production goes, Koji earned a 1.1 out of 1.2 for production. I wish he was amped up rather than relying on the built-in speakers on the electric piano that he's playing. This seems like a hastily recorded gem. If you have an opportunity to record a songwriter playing an iconic song, you're a fool for not being better prepared. But I would be happy to hear him play this song performed on a child's keyboard. How did it strike you for performance and production for this recording?
I felt much the same way. I rated the performance at a 0.9 out of 1.2. It is a single take, impromptu live performance, but it still played very well. There are a couple little flubbed notes here and there, but there's an awful lot of humanity, again, being my main theme, because of the rubato feel of the piano playing. He's not sticking to a metronome, so that gives it a very human feel.
I don't know when this piece was recorded, when this recording was done, but I imagine that it was very recently or not too long ago. So the man probably hasn't played this song in like years. So he nails it as far as that goes. Like, for not having performed this song for a long time, he did an excellent job.
Well, I guess that speaks to how memorable the whole piece is. Even its composer can remember it. For the production, I felt that it garnered a 0.7 out of 1.2. It's in mono. It's not even in stereo. The sound quality just isn't great. But the arrangement of having 3 themes as a medley is excellent. The only thing missing that prevented the arrangement from getting full 0.6 out of 0.6 credit is having the coin box effect. He didn't play that. I think that's a fail on Koji Kondo's part. All 3 themes that were played in this piece have a lot of nostalgia associated with them. For me, for my generation, for Kev, my little brother, even in 8-bit format, they're elegant compositions that evoke emotions that are associated with their respective settings in the game itself. Getting to see the composer perform them on the piano is just an added bonus, although this is not likely the version I would seek out or put into heavy rotation. I rated the appeal of this particular recording at a 2.8 out of 3.6, and I rated the medley itself at an overall TuneScore of 7.5 out of 10. Kev, how did it appeal to you?
I think I gave him a lot of credit for this one. I gave Koji 3.4 points out of 3.6 for appeal. Emotion, again, hits me hard for 1.4 out of 1.6 points total. This song is inseparable from the feeling of playing Super Mario Brothers. It's hard to untangle the two, really. Full marks for both innovation and repeat listenability. I think I remember reading while we were listening to this song that Koji Kondo is not a classically trained musician or songwriter. It's an impressive effort, especially for how long ago it was written, too, as well. My final tune score for Koji Kondo's Super Mario Brothers medley is 8.9 out of 10.
Oh, phenomenal. Now, Kev, though, you did just say something that I kind of disagree with. You said that the themes, these songs, are inseparable from the game itself. But I can actually remember, not very long ago, working in an office, and I'm a whistler. I whistle when I walk. And no matter what melancholy tune I started improvising with my whistling, it would always end up being a Super Mario Brothers theme. And it had nothing to do with the game. It was just, that's where the melody led me. And we would also occasionally hum or whistle certain parts, the castle theme. Da-da-da-da-da-da. We would occasionally do that depending on, whether someone said something stupid in a video conference or something like that. They were just so evocative of a feeling or an emotion that I don't think it had to have anything to do with the video game. It was just made popular and brought to the forefront of some of our heads for melodies that it then became associated with something else. So I would say it transcends the game. In the case of these themes from Super Mario Brothers, that may not be the case with American Venom, and it may not be the case for Jenova and for most songs, but I think Super Mario Brothers is just, it's the top of the video game soundtrack mountain.
Well, it's definitely a game that I imagine a lot of people have played, especially, in our cohort. And so the melody itself is just pervasive. I don't think you could get away with humming that tune in a crowded place and not hearing, one person be like, oh, that's the Super Mario Brothers theme. It's very identifiable immediately. And it does persist beyond. I haven't played Super Mario Brothers, the game, in a long time, decades probably, but it's still back of my mind, still in there. Did an excellent job. It's one of those things where it sticks with you afterwards.
Now, Kev, I just said that Super Mario Brothers is the top of the video game theme mountain or soundtrack mountain, but I'm also not that big of a gamer. I don't have that much experience with listening to video game soundtracks or playing video games or anything. So do you think you could enlighten me? Am I right in saying that this is the top of the heap, the king of the hill of video game songs? Or is there something that's even better?
That's a tough call. This one's pretty hard to beat. And I will say that I disagree with you on one point. I think that, you said that you don't play a lot of video games, but you certainly have the physique of a video game player. So I want you to know that you fooled me. I think that one of my favorites actually is if you ever played the original Batman game on the Nintendo Entertainment System. That's a really memorable one for me. If you haven't heard it, the mini bosses play an excellent cover of that song. But what do you think? If you don't think any of the songs that we listen to tonight, if they're not the top tier, what do you think is? What do you think would be the best video game song?
That's a tough one for me. I think the only other one that comes to mind is the training theme from Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Da, 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 da. That one where he's being chased on a bicycle.
I believe that's Koji Kondo again.
Probably so. He did a lot of work for Nintendo in the day, I'm sure.
I also know that Brent would probably say that the Mega Man 2 theme is probably his favorite. And that's a good one that we should listen to. Some guy, the Mysterious Pedro.
Oh.
Maybe we should do another video game episode and have him on. That'd be fun.
I'm not interested in another video game episode, Kev, but I think we can probably arrange to have the Mysterious Pedro on the show. So I think, though, we've covered 3 excellent video game tracks. We should probably, though, wrap up. Let's talk about what, if anything, we learned. I think the biggest question in all this is what makes a good video game song and what makes it memorable.
I think it largely depends on the context. I think that 2 of the songs that we listened to tonight, American Venom and Jenova, were really tied to the emotion of the scene for that portion of the video game that you're playing, really tied into the suspense or the
danger.
Danger is a good word. Thank you. For the portion of the game, it's a big boss battle. Oh, we got to get in there and kill the guy. It's great. So it's very dynamic. There's a lot going on there and a lot to tie you to the emotion of that scene in the video game. As far as Koji Kondo's Super Mario Brothers medley, there's a lot of setting involved there. Different themes for different portions of the world that you're traveling through. It's really going to tie you into that setting or to that emotion, to whatever's happening in the video game, or to give you something pleasing to listen to over and over and over and over again, because you're going to be, games especially like Super Mario Brothers, you're going to be doing that over and over again for a while. How do you feel? What do you think is the most important thing?
Yeah, I think the ability to evoke an emotion that's appropriate to the setting is at the forefront of what makes a good video game song. But I would add, and this may be a little bit more broadly applicable to any instrumental, because you don't have lyrics, at least in these three songs. And I'm thinking my experience is Red Dead Redemption 2, and a couple of those songs that play in the game, like during missions, they actually have lyrics. They have singing. So more generally applicable to instrumentals, because you don't have lyrics to draw the listener in, to hook them by the ear, you have to be able to evoke that emotion using your harmonic texture, your strong melody. And you have to balance being really simple and being fairly complex, because if it's too complex, it will become grating on the ear on repeat listens. And that's going to make someone not want to play the game. But if it's too simple, it's going to pass through one ear and right out the other, and it can become despised in the same way, or it will just never grab the listener. So finding that balance and striking it well, and again, it depends on the game, that context, how often is it going to be played? Is it just during one mission or one setting, or is it pretty much played throughout? And is it a game that you can speed run in 6.5 minutes like Super Mario Brothers? Which I just know that technically can be done or has been done. I've never beaten the entire game myself, for sure. Or is it something that just plays once in a 60-hour playthrough of Red Dead Redemption 2, that kind of thing. I think those are all things that you have to keep in mind if you were thinking about composing and producing something that could be used in video games. Now, for some of our audience who may be burgeoning songwriters or musicians, that could be a very lucrative space to move into, to try and market to video game makers. So I know that there's an indie scene with video games. There's the AAA scene with, like Rockstar Games and EA Sports and some of those other ones. So just because you are like me and don't play a lot of video games, or you could be like someone who doesn't play video games, don't turn off entirely from that as a potential market if you're a musician. Well, I think we learned a lot today, so I think it's time to end. We've had a lot of fun listening to these video game songs. We hope you will give each one a listen. Let us know what you think in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, all that nonsense that we have to put in a YouTube video. But that's been Kevin Niebrick. I've been Carrie Nightingale. We want to thank you so much for giving us your attention. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.